All right, everybody. Welcome to another episode here of the Shane White Show. Jim, welcome to the show. We have Jim Simon here today, the founder of JiMMY Bar. What's going on, man?
Thank you for having me. I like the Shane White show. It kind of bounces off your tongue a little bit.
Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah, I rebranded it recently at the beginning of the year. I've been thinking about doing it. It started off, it was simply finance with Shane White, and it was very it was very like personal finance and investment heavy. And then it just slowly but surely became more of a CPG podcast. And then obviously everything Kyle and I are doing, it made a sense to, it made more sense to rebrand it. So I appreciate that.
You know, in boxing, the several fighters over the years have added the word sugar to their nickname, like
Okay.
Sugar Shane Mosley. So might want to be Sugar Shane White.
Oh, that kind of rings a little bell too. Sugar Shane
Yeah,
White.
Sugar
I
Shane
kind of like that. That's funny. I'd never thought of that. Love it. That's really funny. Well, yeah, thanks for taking the time. Really appreciate it. I know you're a busy guy. For everyone listening that doesn't know what JiMMY Bar is, would you mind giving everyone just an intro into the brand and obviously your business?
So sure. Jimmy Bar is a leader in functional snacks. And what I mean by that is we make protein bars and keto bars and keto dessert cups and pudding and coming out with several new lines of product that focus on not just great taste, but functionality, meaning keto is obviously for weight loss and energy. We've got a bar with collagen for hair, skin, nails. We have a bar with turmeric and plant-based caffeine for energy and recovery. Like every single product we make has some purpose, not just tasting great. It's just a value add that it does something also.
Yeah, no, I love that. I know I felt like you guys were one of, and correct me if I'm wrong, I felt like you were one of the first ones in the space to really go after like functionality. Like now you see some people trying to do it, but you guys really, I feel like we're like the leaders in that early on.
Yeah, we were in it. It was sort of epiphany that I had. I don't know if I've told you this story before, but we had a booth at one of the big fitness shows. It was in LA, and it was right when we came out. We pivoted from a date-based bar to a high protein, low sugar. It's when like Quest bar was blowing up, and so we said, okay, well, let's make something, but it's different, it's crunchier,
Sure.
it's blah blah blah. I was talking to this really buff dude and his girlfriend, and he said, when do I eat this? Is this pre-workout? Is this post-workout? Is this recovery? Like, when do I eat that? I didn't have a good answer. I'm just like, well, I eat it, man. Just it tastes
Yeah.
good.
Whenever you want.
And then I realized like that's not the most elegant response, And then from there, I was thinking people eat for purpose. Like I dated a girl when I was in my 20s, and she was a bodybuilder, and she used to tell me eat for function, not for flavor. It's like people don't say that anymore, but
Yeah.
flavor too, but eat for function, not for flavor. And so people want that function, and it's no different than you taking a CBD if you got to sleep, or someone taking we all drink coffee, which is the ultimate functional food and beverage, right? We drink coffee to wake up. You might drink a glass of wine at night to wind down. You're eating your protein drinks after workout, whatever it is, caffeine, whatever it is, you're eating for purpose more now than ever, as opposed to people just grabbing for their bologna sandwiches or grilled cheese sandwiches to feed hunger. Food is medicine, and so we want it to be sort of on the right side of history when it comes to functionality. And from there, we've launched our pudding keto desserts, which are first to market, which solve a couple problems. But the biggest one is that when you're on the keto diet or just trying to lose weight or just forget about keto, you're just trying to eat a low sugar diet,
Mhm.
there's not much out there when it comes to desserts that tastes good, right? So
Yeah.
we think we solved that one there. So that's, yeah, we have been the first in that.
Love it. Yeah. The bars, you guys span a wide swath of benefits too, which I think is really interesting. Do you mind just kind of diving into just even high level what some of those are and why you guys landed on the types of functionality you did?
Yeah. So if you look at tea, tea has sort of been ahead of the curve. Actually, beverages have been ahead of the curve. So there's a couple teas that'll say, there's actually tea, for constipation called Smooth Move.
Yeah. Oh,
Sort of
nice.
funny.
I've seen that.
There's there there's this, a sleepy tea. There's a calm tea. The blah blah. And I remember being in Whole Foods. And I'm looking at that. I'm like, there should be food like this. And so right now we've got an Eye of the Tiger bar, which was a licensing deal I did with the songwriter who wrote Eye of the Tiger, for all the Rocky movies. He's a buddy from Chicago, and so that's a licensing deal, and that has turmeric and plant-based caffeine because he's a workout guy. He's 70, but he's in terrific shape. So that's your workout bar. Then we've got another bar called Wake and Focus, and that has MC2L and omega 3s that some field promotes brain health, as well as guarana caffeine, which obviously kind of makes you alive and energetic. And the funny story about that one is I said, like I was talking to a couple of college kids, interns at our office, and all the kids are on Adderall, which is not particularly good for you. I'm
Right.
like, there needs to be like a healthy alternative. Like, you're popping these pills so that you can study. It's not like the healthiest shit in the world. Like, you should do something healthy. And so we're like, we should create an Adderall bar, but it's good for you.
Yeah.
And I named it Wake and Focus. And two of our interns, because our company's always been sort of funny and cheeky, they're like, Jim, that's really boring. No one will get, the kids won't get it. And they said, we'll come up with a better name. I said, all right, I'm going to walk my dog around the block, which took 20 minutes. And you guys come up with a name. And so I came back, and on the whiteboard, it said woke AF. I'm like, what's woke? What does that mean? And they're like, you don't know what woke? Like, no, I'm too old. They're like, what does woke mean? They're like, it means enlightened, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, what's AF? And they told me what AF stands for. And I'm like, I like it. That's a very cool name. I don't know if anybody over like 30 will get it, but I don't care. So
I love
we
it.
went to market with woke AF, and then we probably get sued because someone else had the name. So we changed it back to Wake and Focus.
Oh, I was gonna say, yeah, I never saw that version of it. That's hilarious. I gotta see after this. I will have to see some old images or product shots. I'd love to see that. That's awesome.
We were strongly encouraged by the other company's lawyers to not use it. But, we also created a beauty bar with collagen because, a lot of people are taking collagen for hair, skin, and nails. A full line of keto for weight loss. What am I forgetting? That's about it. But, it spans, and we flirted with a happy bar. We flirted with a mood bar. We flirted with CBD, putting CBDs in bars. We haven't done it yet. But what we wanted to do was expand outside of bars. So not just be another bar company, but a functional snack company. And everything we come out with in the future will be non-bar because people are eating all kinds of snacks.
Love it. No, yeah, you guys do have a great swath, and obviously we'll add links to this for everyone to check it out. So JiMMY Bar is that's your main thing that you're focused on right now, and you're building a big business in a lot of different ways there. Before we get like really into the rabbit hole of JiMMY Bar, though, would love to even take a step back and learn a little bit more about you before JiMMY Bar. I know JiMMY wasn't your first endeavor you ever did. What were you doing from a business perspective before you decided to start a bar brand?
Well, before I started JiMMY Bar, I was happy and I had money. And that changed. That changed dramatically when I started a consumer packaged good company. Lost all my money, and I'm no longer happy now. Serial entrepreneur, pretty much like your typical entrepreneurial story. Started my first company at 25, got acquired at 28, all on the West Coast, and then have lived all over the country. And my mom actually counted. I think I've lived in 32 places or 32 different dwellings in the past 30 years. So
Wow.
naturally restless. Yeah, really, but always started different companies, some wins, some losses, but I spanned across paper and packaging was my first. And then I got involved. I ran a couple of internet companies in New York. And then I went into real estate. I actually had an idea for a B2B real estate site for investment properties. But because I was running a company that focused on college housing, and after doing many deals with people and companies that own college housing, I'm like, what a clever way to invest. If you're buying like 4-unit buildings or 20-unit buildings, colleges don't go out of business. They're usually cheaper. They're usually smaller than buying in New York City or San Francisco. So I'm like, I want to start a site strictly for people who are buying housing to allow the sellers to sell directly to the buyers and leave out the brokers in the middle. What happened was I created the platform, and then I started buying college housing, and I liked it so much, I just kept doing it. And so
Oh, really? So you
the
just
idea of,
ditched
I
the
just kept
platform and
buying.
just did it yourself.
It's a platform because it was, 2003 to 2010 when I was doing it. It was an awesome time for real estate until the world crashed. But we started buying Syracuse and then in a couple other communities around Syracuse, New York, and it was a great business. From there, went back to technology and was SVP of business development, which is doing deals for a couple of internet companies, and then came back and said, okay, I'm ready to start my company. So everything has been kind of an answer to your previous gig, like you
Yeah.
work for a big company and they're like, okay, I want to start a small company. Yeah. So for me, it was the same thing. Like, I worked for a paper company in Chicago, first job out of college. And then, like any 25-year-old who doesn't know his head from his ass, I'm like, I can do it better. So I started my own paper company in San Francisco, got acquired, worked for the company that acquired me. Then they bought me out again and it said, hey, move on. And then I'm like, okay, paper's kind of boring. I'm going to work in this internet thing in 1999. So I moved to New York and did that. So everything's sort of an answer, to what you did previously.
Got it. No, that makes a ton of sense. And if you just always been that kind of person, like I think it's really interesting to hear serial entrepreneurs. Did you like from, the get think that you wanted to just start your own businesses? You never thought you'd probably work for a big company for very long?
I remember my senior year in college, I went to Columbia College in Chicago and I was taking a film class and I was reading basically a documentary about Martin Scorsese, the director. He did Goodfellas.
Oh
I
yeah.
was looking at his career and it was, Taxi Driver, 1976 or whatever. And then he did another movie. Then he did another movie. Some flops in there, a lot of hits. He'll have like a mafia movie, then he'll have a romantic movie, and I'm like, that's what I want my career to be like. I don't want to work for a company for 30 years. I'm not suited for it. It would bore me. I want to be in multiple industries. I don't want to work in one industry because I'm sort of naturally restless and curious. So I just thought I'd love to do 2-year stints. And that's how it was for a while. This is JiMMY Bars. I'm in year 8, but after JiMMY Bar, I'll most likely go back to tech. So yeah, it was planned.
Wow. And I think it's really interesting because you hit it on the head. You've bounced across industries that normally I would argue people don't do very often, right? Like tech, real estate, CPG. You just don't hear that a lot, which I thought was really interesting. And I'd be curious to know, I guess I have two parts of my question. The first one, what made CPG attractive for you to go from where you were to that? And then when you were evaluating CPG, I guess I'm just curious to know like the jump, like what research or what knowledge did you know that was like, oh, I want to give this one a shot next?
I think lack of intelligence plays into it. I think going into CPG without knowing what you're doing is not the smartest thing to do. But it was, again, going back, it was meeting in, I used to joke when you're in software, I was, worked for a big data management platform doing business development. And so you're kind of selling air. You can't touch your product, right? And, the company I was working with was doing really cool stuff. They were, crunching billions of nodes of data, cookie data about, what users are doing and then would try to help Verizon Wireless or whoever, target their ads. And that's really cool. But you can't touch it. You can't look at it. You can't, everything is sort of, in space. And I'm like, I want my next gig. I'm going to go back and run my own company. And B, I was like 48 or whatever when I started the company, 47. I'm like, I want to do something that's good for the world. I'm sort of, in kind of the third period out of 4 periods of my career. I'm like, I've been, fortunate and had some luck, but I'm like, I want to do something that's good for the world. First, I want to do something. I was getting very geeky on healthy food and also the evils of food and in the meat industry of the horrific stuff that goes on with the animals. I'm like, I want to sort of do something good for the world, right? And so I pitched my sister, who is a restaurateur and a chef, like, let's do a food company. And she's like, yeah, because she was sort of getting burned down on restaurants. It's a hard biz. She's a great chef. And so we just said, let's do something healthy. And she being a chef, her version of healthy and mine are very different. Like her version of healthy, it's like less brown sugar. Chefs, they're not function and flavor. They're all about flavor,
Right.
So,
oh yeah.
I had no plans of being in bars. My first idea was healthy ice cream because I'm an ice cream addict.
Okay.
that. We're messing around with other stuff, and it just happened. It decided on bars only because, going back to 2014 or whatever, bars were. I mean, if you think about the offering on the market, it was awful.
Yeah.
There's some pretty good, tasting bars now, but at the time it was terrible. And so you'd eat this bar that's, it's all marketing. It's just BS. I mean, it's like, you're all covered. It's just
100%.
it's crap. And, just like all the sports beverages are all crap. And so I'm eating this and I'm like, God, this is awful. Why don't we take a crack at bars? We go down in our basement, like, a Friday night after we've had a little wine, and we just start throwing in dates, throwing in this, right? Not knowing anything what we're doing. But
Wow.
that's part of the fun. Part of the fun for me personally is learning a new industry. You sort of learn the players in the new industry. You're teaching yourself as you go along. It's definitely not the easiest way to build your career, industry hopping. But I remember Richard Branson, who's a billionaire, talking about it because he has tackled some of the hardest industries there is. He had Coke, Coca-Cola, he had Virgin Cola. Airlines may be the hardest industry on the planet. He tackled that with Virgin Airlines. When he had a very successful record business, Virgin Records, he kept trying other things, and he drove his board of directors absolutely bonkers because he kept throwing money at these new ideas in the hardest industries in the world. I mean, can you imagine going against Pepsi and Coke?
Right. Oh yeah.
It's not easy. And he still does that because he's like, I just love the challenge and I love attacking something that people think I can't attack, And so from that point of view, it's kind of what I did with this is that I'm like, there's so much nonsense in food. It's all marketing. It's still all marketing. That hasn't changed.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I was thinking Richard Branson, he's probably one I should spend more time learning about because you're right. He's tried so many different things. I would also argue though, some of the being naive, I feel like goes a long way. Like I think sometimes if you're in an industry for too long, you get in your ways. I mean, even the conversation we had earlier about retailers, like that's what my perception is from my past at our X bar. But
yeah,
I mean, who knows? Maybe that'll all change in a year or two, and my knowledge won't be cutting edge anymore. I don't know. When it comes to like Costco or whatever.
Well, think about it this way. Look at the automobile industry. This is a great example. For the internal combustion engine's been outmoded for 100 years. There's been electric cars,
right?
But they constantly get scrapped because General Motors didn't want to do it because there's some tie-ins with the oil industry.
Right.
There's a lot of corruption going on. What happened? It took a tech guy, Elon Musk, who created Tesla, who looked at Detroit, and I remember hearing an interview. He's like, these guys are old, they're slow, they don't innovate. The gas engine is nonsense. They're tied in with big oil, and the politicians backing big oil 100%. And he's like, I'm going to create this electric car. Everyone thought he was nuts, but he had the background being from PayPal. He was a tech guy, still is. And so he did it. And so when you come into an industry with fresh eyes, you come in there just like, I mean, I remember the first pitch I ever made was with Jewel, which is, the Chicago home grocery chain. And they're like, it's $20,000 in slotting. And I'm like, what's slotting? What's slotting? He goes, well, you pay us to, and then we need marketing support. And then you have to go get signed up with this distributor. And then you need a broker. And I'm like, this industry is just crazy. You can't, And so from there, we took a very different distribution path. And that is, we went straight into corporate pantries, which is Facebook, Google, Oracle, into all those guys selling direct, essentially just selling direct, B2C selling direct. I loved it. I mean, you built a nice business out of that. You're not going to build a $20 million business that way, but we had a nice little base. I was just going direct. I wasn't even going through distributors. That industry has changed quite a bit. There are a lot of middlemen now who have their hands out, but yeah, you're right. I mean, if you wanted to go into whatever, tech or, some different industry, you're going to come in with fresh eyes and fresh ideas.
Yeah, 100%. And for you, going from the industries you were in and then jumping into JiMMY Bar, I mean, one of the things I would love to know too is you being in the kitchen with your sister, messing around, trying to figure out recipes, throwing different things in for ingredients. How did you guys go from that to then, actually setting up a business? I always think on this podcast, we always try to go with that 0 to 1. For me, I hear a lot of stories that a lot of people do that first part, right? Where they have an idea, maybe they're messing around in the kitchen for a week, but like actually taking that and trying to sell it and then commercialize it is a whole nother, it's a leap that most people never make. And you've
Right.
done it a few times. So what was it like for you with JiMMY Bar going from the kitchen to actually launching a product?
Part of it was, it was just a side hustle. I had a job, I had money in the bank. Everything was good. I was a little restless, but I just wanted to do something on the side. I didn't think it was going to happen. I didn't think the company would be this successful. It was just a side hustle. And but I did want to do something in food. I've wanted to do something in food for a while. I remember us, using the clear stickers and slapping the stickers. I used to pay my nieces who are like 9, 10 years old, like, all right, here's, a bucket sticker, put them on the stickers. It was just fun. It was just
Yeah.
a fun hustle. But again, I've done it. I've started or ran 6 companies. So I know how to do it, and it's just a matter of selling, I mean, it's just go sell. So not, it's like, who is it? Edison or Einstein? I always forget this, said, 90% of success is perspiration, not inspiration. Just got to do it.
Love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's true. I know if you've ever listened to it, Peter Rahal was on How I Built This, and he tells a funny story. His dad did the same thing where he came, I think they had sold like maybe 100 bars. They had, obviously like very little market attraction at that point.
Yeah.
And he asked his dad for some money. He goes, would you be willing to loan me some money to start RX Bar? And his dad said, shut the fuck up, go sell 1,000 bars and come back to me. I'm like, it's really good advice, right? It's like, just go sell it, go prove it out. That's how you start anything, right? Because like any of the systems, any of the processes, they're all going to be garbage at first.
It's true. And I was telling my niece, who's, she's like 24, she wants to change industries right now. I'm like, just go do it. Don't worry about your resume. You're 24. This is when you take your chances. But, I always tell, aspiring food entrepreneurs, go raise money. Like, start selling so you have some revenue, so you have something to talk about, but go raise money. In other industries, you don't have to raise a lot of money. When you started this business, you didn't have to raise a lot of money, did you?
No. Yeah, no, we've bootstrapped it from the beginning.
Yeah, you bootstrap it. So there's a lot to be said to just go hustle.
Yeah.
You watch, Mark Cuban's always talking about, like, I remember this woman on Shark Tank had, it was cakes for dogs. It was like, I forget what it was called. It was kind of
interesting. I know they have those out here in the suburbs now. My wife loves every year for our dog's birthday. She gets one.
My wife got like $50 on my dog's, birthday cake.
Yeah.
But she wasn't, the girl was really smart. She wasn't a salesperson. And so Cuban said something so harsh, but so true. And he's like, if you can't get behind your fear sales, like, standing in front of someone when there's a 99% chance of rejection, it's hard. It's just hard. And if you can't get past this, I can't bet on you. And so, I would say to anybody, if you're thinking about starting a business, do it on the side at first, but go sell.
I love that advice. It's funny because you mentioned Kyle and I. It's true. Like I think for a lot of people think you got to like jump and it's like, boom, you're making money or it's successful. I almost think there's something to that, like treating any idea like a side hustle, like just fall in love with the process of it, right? Like, don't even worry about the money right away. It's like, try to just have quality, whatever it is, whether it's a product, a service, like make something really good and then just get really passionate about making it better and then build it from there. It sounds like it's kind of what you did. You kind of like, it wasn't like you needed to sell JiMMY bars to pay your mortgage type of thing.
No, I didn't. And then when I started JiMMY bars, then I couldn't pay my mortgage. So
the opposite problem.
But start as a side hustle and think about it, but also think about what your true day-to-day is going to be. You know what I mean? So for me, my true day-to-day selling, I've been doing that for 30 years. So it's like perfect. And it doesn't matter if I'm selling paper, real estate, data, whatever, it's the same shit, right?
Sure.
So that's fine. If you're sitting alone in a room, working alone, if that's cool with you, great, go do it. But then also you think about, I remember I was looking at, when I was doing real estate, buying a hotel, and I was in Brooklyn, and I'm like, what's the day-to-day really going to be? And I'm going to be dealing with complaining people who didn't get their pancakes. I'm like, I don't want to do that. Like,
sure. Oh yeah.
People bitching at me, I mean, so I didn't do it. But yeah, you got to think of your day to day. What's your true day to day going to be? Because when you strip the layers away of being an entrepreneur, as you know, it's hard. It's
Yeah.
grueling.
And it's a little, it can be lonely at times. Like even if you're working with customers or you have a small team, like at the end of the day, it's like it's like just you or maybe a partner or whatever. But like it's not as I don't know, working for a big company, the one thing you usually have there is you have like a team that you're just constantly in communication with. You're sitting with people. It's different. It's just a different dynamic.
It is different. It is lonely. Lonely is a word that you can. I mean, it's very lonely being an entrepreneur, and also you have the weight of weight of the world on your shoulders because you know when you're trying to build this kind of company, which is that you have to buy product, you have to stick it on your floor. You got to have money.
Right.
It comes down to money. It's like the thing that wakes me up at night is never my product. Like I know JiMMY bars taste good. I know our puddings rock. I know the stuff we have in R&D is going to be amazing. It's do we have ample money in the bank and are customers paying us? And that's something that you have to have kind of the right aptitude for. You can't have horrific anxiety, and be worrying constantly. You have to sort of whistle through the graveyard a little bit. And as Richard Branson said, fake it to make it a little bit. Like there's a great book he wrote called Losing My Virginity, which I suggest to any entrepreneur.
Oh, I'm gonna write that down right now while you talk.
It's you'll read it in like 3 days. It's so good. But he was talking about he's very, very, very successful, and he owns Virgin Records. He's the toast of the town in London. He owns an island called Necker Island, still has it, in the Virgin Islands, and he's in big trouble financially. Like he's in big, big, big trouble. Barclays was his bank, and they're about to shut him down. He gets a call. He's playing tennis with Peter Gabriel, the rock musician,
Oh wow.
on his private island, and the bank calls him and says, "You're done. You're done. We're not, you pay us off right now, or you're done." And he had no money. Like he was highly leveraged with his airline, and so
Whoa.
he said to Peter, he goes, I've got to, make a few calls, go play tennis with someone else. He was totally calm. At least the way he tells it, he was totally calm. And
Sure.
that's, you kind of have to be that way. And that is, you're betting on yourself. The only thing different between the person who starts a company that ends up being a smash success and a person that starts a company that doesn't go anywhere is that person, is the entrepreneur, and the moves he or she makes and the alignments they make with investors. And do they, like you and I talked about before, if you were to start a food company, you go direct to consumer right now. I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
That's really smart. But the problem is you don't know that unless you've been in the industry for a while, right?
100%. Yeah. No, it's really interesting. Those are great points for anyone who's listening who wants to start something. And I think, it's funny while you were saying that, one thing that I know has resonated with me in the last year is at the end of the day, the other thing about being an entrepreneur is no one cares besides you. You know what I mean? Like you'll have friends and family who are definitely interested and want to hear about it and hope you do well.
Pulling for you. Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like every day you wake up and go to bed, and like truthfully, if it doesn't work, it's on you. And you're the only one that cares as much as, no one's going to care more than you. I think it's really interesting.
No one's going to care more than you. No one will be able to sell, like you can, when you're personally pitching companies to work with, or I'm pitching, retailers or whatever, no one cares like you do.
Yeah.
You're going to hire brokers, but they're not going to care if they're going to have passion you do. So you try to find people to work for you that have that kind of passion, and you'll find some great ones, but they're not going to have your passion because no one has their ass on the line like you do.
Right.
I mean, it's, I've got, huge financial responsibilities to, millions of dollars of product on my floor right now. You got to pay for it. So
right.
It is a lot of responsibility. I remember when I started my first company, it was a paper company in San Francisco, and I used my 401k money, and my dad lent me money, but I had to write a $50,000 check, which was a lot of.
Whoa. Yeah.
And I remember having a glass of wine with my girlfriend at the time, and I'm like, that's like, I could go bankrupt. She's like, you're not going to go bankrupt. Like if you're the kind of guy who's going to go back, you wouldn't have started the business, because you're betting on yourself when you're an entrepreneur.
Right. No, it's a good point. That's a scary moment early on, pulling out the 401k right away.
It is. When I think about it now, I'm like, what the hell was I thinking? But when you're younger, you're not worried about that kind of stuff.
And you seem like, I know you do jujitsu and you're a healthy guy. I know it's funny. In the fall, I turned 30, and I was telling my wife on my birthday, we were just talking about, whatever. I feel like when you 30 is kind of a weird one where it's like you do feel like you're out of your 20s. And
Yeah.
I was just talking to her about it. I'm like, I just remember being all through my 20s, like making sure like me being the finance guy, I was like making sure we're saving enough, I'm investing enough, all this stuff. But at the same time, I'm like, I should have risked more. I'm like, I'm 30 now looking back, and I feel like a baby still. Like all of my 20s, I should have just been like taking total risk, throwing Hail Marys, seeing if one of them hit. Because at the end of the day, if I get to my 30s and I'm not where necessarily I need to be, like you have so much time. Hopefully, right? Like
Well,
it's funny.
that's great perspective. You're 100% right. That you're 30, but you've got 40 or more years in your work life, maybe more. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And you're in the second inning.
Right. Yeah.
That's
If you think
nothing.
about like baseball, yeah, it's like, oh man, you have 8 more innings to go after this. Why don't we just take some shots here, swing for the fence?
Or why didn't I buy crypto when it was $1,000? Or I was actually just looking at Amazon, and I own a little bit of Amazon, but I'm like, why didn't I buy?
A ton. I know
I want,
that. I will say that's funny you say those two things. Those are probably the only two. Those Amazon, crypto, and Tesla are the three I've been bullish on for as long as I can remember. So luckily, I've always just like always put some away towards those. Crypto, I'm still super bullish on. Like I bought Ethereum was the first one. I think I bought it in 2014, and I've
oh
just
wow.
sat on it. I've just never sold it. So that's good. I've got a couple of those, but I'm with you. Like in hindsight, it's always like, oh, I should just taken bigger bets. Like I should have. I mean, what's it? What is it? 20 or hindsight's 2020, right? So you're always going to
Well,
think
and
that, but
there are people who will make those big bets. Like you look at, and again, like any podcast about this one, how I built this. There's so many amazing books. Every entrepreneur should just absorb the knowledge of other entrepreneurs, because I remember, God, it was like 2017. I was getting married. I came married till I was 50. I'm getting married. I'm in 2 or 3 lawsuits with Jimmy Bars. Just one was just actually both of them were total nonsense. And I'm running out of money. The business is running out of money. And so, and I've always had a little bit of anxiety. So I got to go running. I got to get outside. So I'm going for a run, and a crow dive bombs me, like actually hits me on the head.
wait,
And
oh,
I'm
it actually like hit
oh,
you?
oh yeah, it hit me on the head. I think I was running under a tree where it probably had a nest.
Oh wow.
I'm like, the world is against me, but you know what? If I was 25, I would have said, "Oh yeah, crow dive bomb me. That's awesome." Yeah.
Yeah. That's funny, right? Just all perspective. No, I mean that'd be scary though. That stuff always happens on days where there's a million other things going on too, right?
I know, and that's why 60-year-old people own the world, because they've made the mistakes of when they're 30, like you, or in the 50s, like me. They've made the mistakes and they learn and they get better. It's kind of the antithesis of being an athlete, where you peak when you're 26 or 25. Business people, I think, peak later on. There are sort of crazy instances when someone strikes it rich in their 20s, but most of the time it's really when you're 50s or 60s, where you constantly get some wins, some losses, you learn from your losses, and then you end up in good shape.
That makes a ton of sense. Yeah, I agree. And I've tried to learn a lot from entrepreneurs on this podcast and just in general from reading and listening to podcasts, having people on this podcast. One thing I've found very consistent is entrepreneurs that tend to do well. And I feel that I get this sense from you a lot is something around falling in love with the process. Like just realizing whether it's a dollar value you're going after or an account you're trying to get, like those things will come and go and you'll win some and you'll lose some. But like if you love what you said earlier, which is the day to day and the process, like that's, I think probably I can only imagine 30 or 40 more years of being in this game, what that has to be kind of the key to it all.
And it's also competitiveness. How serious do you take it? I don't know if I'd ever admit this to my wife, but it's the most important thing in my life right now.
Yeah.
So is that this business succeeds, more important than my health, more important than my family. I mean, it's just because without it, things will get bad. So it's the most important thing to me that this business succeeds. all my friends and family who have invested in it, because we've never taken institutional money. It's all friends and family as well as my money. Like, I got to win here. And so that's
Mhm.
the pressure, but it's good pressure. Pressure is a privilege. So it's good pressure to have. And then, now that Jimmy Bars is in really good shape and it's rocking, I can afford like a little bit of time. You know what I mean? It's, I used to have my laptop on my lap, working at 2 a.m, on LinkedIn. I've always been a huge LinkedIn guy, reaching out to retailers, trying to find the buyer, prospecting. Now, I have people on my team who can help out a little bit with that. So I can
Yeah.
pull back, and I'm more elephant hunting, going after, Amazon and just a few retailers that I really want to focus on. And then my sales team is working on the rest of them. But you get to a point when your company starts being successful where you can pull back a little bit on the minutia and focus on what you like to. I like selling. So if I could just sell and never write another check or worry about payroll or inventory or packaging, which I probably hate the most, like the little, disclaimers on every
Yeah.
box stuff, I would be thrilled just to sell.
Got it. Okay. No, that makes a ton of sense too. I mean, totally get that. And everyone's good at something else. And for you, this is the question that comes to my mind when I hear that is because I think sometimes just me as a person, whether it's with my business or anything, a podcast, whatever, I've always struggled with giving work or control to other people. Like I'm just one of those people I feel like I'm like, I don't know if I want to like spend the time to like get you up to speed. Like I can just do it myself, which I know is horrible when you're thinking about like when you want to like actually grow something, eventually you got to give the reins to somebody else to kind of like do the
That's
minutia.
totally common. That's
How
common.
how did you kind of get through a lot of that, or how did you
Took
develop
a
in
lot.
that way?
It took time. You know what? When you're an entrepreneur, think about it. Like, if you are starting your own company, you really are betting on yourself. Like, you have a partner. I have a partner, my sister. We have completely different skill sets. So when it comes to bringing in the money, sales, you got to really bet on yourself. You have to think you're really good at something. So you know exactly what you're good at. And if you're honest, you know exactly what you suck at. And one things that entrepreneurs are often stuck at is delegating, because they want to do everything, but you can't grow that. You can't scale. If you're
Yeah.
not going to delegate, you can't scale. You have to bring in amazing people. Like, I brought in my VP of sales, Chip. He knew everything about C stores. I didn't know anything about C stores. I didn't even know if C store was going to be a good category. It's a great category. It's probably my favorite category, because it caters to the hustler, the one who is going to get on a plane and go to Louisville or Bentonville, like a lot of these smaller
Yeah.
towns around the country, and sell, as opposed to just pitching, you know, one store, one buyer, so on. So you have to know what you're good at. You have to know what you suck at. I'm not great at finance. I hate managing. So I just hire people to deal with that. And as your company grows, you'll have to start delegating, because you can't scale.
That makes a ton of sense. Yeah. And I can see how entrepreneurs in general, that could be a blind spot, right? Because it's kind of funny, right? When you think about it, because it kind of is the opposite of what we just said on how to go to from zero to one. It really, because going from 0 to 1, it's almost the opposite where you kind of have to do everything. You kind of have to just like
Right.
be real lean, real scrappy. And then at some point you kind of get to that 1 and now you got to go to 2 or 10. And so at that point, you got to figure out how to optimize and delegate.
Well, I've had so many conversations with my sister, Annette, who's my partner, because we have completely different skill sets. She's 100% product, not sales at all. And so, I was teaching her how to delegate, because she runs the plant that we make the bars in. And a lot of times she'll be like, I'll just do it myself. I'll just do it. I'm like, you can't do that. She's 61 now, and her husband, who runs the plant, he's like 61, 62. And I told him, like, Filippo, you can't be lifting, these 100-pound things of peanuts.
Oh,
Like,
wow. Yeah.
let the 25-year-olds, you're going to kill yourself. You can't do it. I'm like, you can't be running shifts. You should be walking around with a clipboard, making sure everybody's doing what they should be. You can't be doing that anymore, because you can't grow. You can't grow if you're the one who's always fixing everything. If you're the one who's always doing everything, if you
Right.
look at, Uber or Google, they're all started by young guys or young women, and they brought in teams when they could afford to, you know what I mean, to help
Yeah.
them out. You can't do everything. You're just not going to grow the company that way. And you and I definitely are aligned, and we like leaner organizations.
Right.
You could grow in our business, $50 million company with 10 people. You really can.
Yeah,
You don't have to have a huge organization, but you have to find amazing people.
definitely. Amazing people. That's a good one. A good takeaway from this. The two questions I know I definitely wanted to ask you, and you just opened the door to one. So I'd love to hit on this one. I've had I think almost 100 founders on here now, so the number has gotten pretty high. I think you're only the second one though that produces your own product. Like you actually have a production facility, you make all your own product. Would love to learn a little bit more about the why behind that, where the idea for doing that, why you didn't just go to a co-packer, because obviously most people that are in the CPG space just end up going with a co-packer. So would love just to learn even at a high level how that all came to be.
What percentage of the founders who you've interviewed are in food?
Probably 90%.
Okay, so uh, it's a interesting and painful story.
Okay.
I didn't want to manufacture. Kind of what you and I were just talking about. It's not my skill set. I'm not mechanical. I can screw in a light bulb. That's about it. My wife makes fun of me.
You and I are the same, Jim.
Oh, my dad was actually worse. So it just didn't. I see these machines running. I'm like, I don't want to do it. I just want to sell.
Yeah,
I want to
right.
do that. And then it's just also for the first 4 years or first 3 years, I was self-financing. I was self-funding the company because I didn't know if we had anything. It was more. I started the company because I was sort of, frankly, ready to do something else, and I was also like for the first year actively working on 2 other business models, both in technology, both that I want to do after JiMMY Bars.
Oh, cool.
Cool ideas, but I didn't know what I didn't know, and so I'm like, do I really want to buy equipment? Do we really? I wasn't paying myself for the first 3 or 4 years. Do I want to buy a $50,000 machine? Do I? It just said. I thought to myself, someone else makes it, I'll sell it, easy peasy. It was my sister Nettie, who's a restaurateur and a chef. Now she's been in food prep for 30 years. So making, I mean, hell, they make, chicken Vesuvio and, these complex Italian meals.
She's like a protein bar. This is easy.
Oh, she's like, Jim, it's so easy. So we got our first co-packer that ended in an ugly divorce.
Oh no.
We went through 5 co-packers in 4 years.
Oh, wow.
Our first 4 years, 5 co-packers. Everyone ended poorly because we didn't like the product. There were mistakes made in the manufacturing, or maybe they're buying your ingredients, maybe buying the cheapest ingredients they can find. Maybe they're using labor that's not the brightest. There's not the love that goes through the way we make our bars, right? And so after the last one ended, which was bad, Nettie, pushed me, and she's like, we're making our own shit. Like, we're making our own stuff. We're not going to use co-packers. I can do this. Filippo can do this. I've been a chef for 30 years. It's not that hard. Like, let's just do this. And so we did it. And so we got a space in Elko Village, and we started manufacturing. So we did the opposite. Most companies, who self-manufacture will self-manufacture until they get too big. For us, we did the opposite, which is we started getting bigger, and we're having so many problems on the manufacturing side. We thought, if we don't own our supply chain, meaning buy our own ingredients, if we don't own the manufacturing, meaning make our own, what do we have? What do you have? You're so dependent. It's one thing with the retailers that we all know. It's some are amazing to work with, some are very difficult to work with. So
Sure.
That's a challenge. But if I'm going to have a challenge with just my own product that I'm writing checks for, you don't have anything. So I would say I tell food entrepreneurs all the time, as soon as you know that you have some, if you're really going to do it in your whatever, as long as it's a relatively easy product to make, like bars or whatever, ice cream is easy to make. If it's not a complex protein puff or something like that needs to be $500,000 equipment, make it yourself. The other side is a lot of entrepreneurs spend so much time making it that they don't have time selling it.
They get stuck in the manufacturing side.
Get stuck, and they're like when we decided to use a co-packer, we were just, Nettie was hand making them, and at the restaurant, and then we're just selling them to friends. Like,
oh wow, okay.
Like, our first sale was to one of our best friends, and Sunday we were supposed to make bars, and This is when I still had another job, and I went out the night before and drank too much wine. And so I showed up at the restaurant a little bit late, and I was tired, and I was hungover. And it took me like, I mean, the equipment we had was so ridiculous. It took me. It looked like thing you put like ice cubes in. Ice cube
Okay.
tray. You put the
Yeah.
bar, smush it down. And it took 10 minutes into it. I was hot. I was sweating. I was hungover, and I'm like, "We're getting a co-packer." I just don't want to. I don't want to do this. Like it's
Yeah.
my Sunday. I don't want. I want to be. I want to be out going for a jog on the lake. I don't want to do this. But doing that for 4 years with co-packers and having bad divorces every time, we decided we got to run it ourselves. And it's the best thing. It was probably the best decision we ever made.
That's really cool. I mean, you just don't hear it a lot today. And I don't know if that's because it's easier to go the co-packing route, even if it's a mess. But you know what I mean? I just don't hear it a lot. That's really cool.
How many people, have problems with their co-packers? A lot.
I have not heard one that has not. So fair enough.
In Nettie's co-packing business, she runs bars for other companies too. Everyone comes to her and says, "Oh my God, I hate my co-packer. I hate my co-packer. I hate my
Oh, I didn't know
co-packer."
that. So where we
Yeah.
visited you,
Oh,
so
yeah.
Nettie, like if I want to start a bar tomorrow, she could actually make it.
You should. Sugar Shane Bars. Yeah.
I was gonna say maybe the official bar of this podcast. It's just through the podcast.
Seriously. Yeah. No, they manufacture for other bar brands. And so like
That's
part
really
of the
cool. I didn't
idea
know that.
of having the co-packer and making it a separate company was I said, let's be the good guy co-packer. Like let's be.
Oh, so you treat that as a different business entirely?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I see on the emails, obviously the Nettie's Kitchen. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
So, that's really cool. So they're actually separate LLCs, but
They're
that's
separate corporations in which I said, let's be the good guys. The market needs a good guy. And so she says, no, the market needs a good girl. Yeah.
I love it. Oh, I like that.
A good gal co-packer. Yeah. So we do that. And that's worked out well, but we're always so jammed with JiMMY Bar orders that, it's hard to get any line time.
But it's cool though. I mean, that seems like the entrepreneur in you. What a good way to like leverage, depending on if because what if JiMMY had a bad streak, but you have a bunch of business coming in that way? I mean, it could be some leverage to just you have multiple opportunities there.
Look, when COVID hit March 2020, right?
Yeah, so I know it's hard to remember.
It was horrible for pretty much every food company other than wine and booze and junk food. It was not good for healthy brands, and so we had some downtime in April. And so, I mean, this is another entrepreneurial thing. So my brother-in-law makes the best freaking pizza on the planet. It's thick, deep dish,
Ooh.
pizza, and he's got a pizza oven that he actually keeps at the co-packer, like it's just a 2-thing pizza.
Oh wait, yeah. Right.
And so he's like, I'm gonna make some pizza. So he starts making pizza, and it's like the best stuff you've ever had in your life. And I'm like, Filippo, this is a business here. Let's do a side hustle. We'll make pizzas until the world comes back to normal. So we got the LLC or the URL FilippoChicagoPizza.com. And so Nettie's making pizzas during the day, and when we have bars to run, we're running bars, and she's out delivering pizza to all our friends. It was hysterical.
Wait, that's amazing. Is he still doing it?
Oh yeah, they're amazing.
And he still sells them online? Like I could order one today?
I think they still have their website, but he's too busy now. So
okay, I was gonna say, me and my wife were just saying we want to try a new pizza place. Like I was like, I'm gonna hit him up.
Well, I'll give you. They make them half baked, so they make them and then they freeze them and then you put it in your oven for a half an hour. But I'm in Arizona. I just had one last week.
Wow.
So yeah.
I always tell people Illuminati's was one of the reasons my wife hooked me into coming to Chicago. I feel like I had a deep dish Illuminati's for the first time when we were visiting her family, and I was like, oh, I gotta move here.
Hey, it's a good reason.
The other question I really wanted to ask, because you hit on it earlier, was around pushing people to raise money. Just because this used to be more of a finance focused podcast, so I always love hearing this perspective, the raising money versus bootstrapping dilemma. Would love to know your perspective. And when you said you really think people should, try to raise money early on, would love to know kind of the why behind your belief there.
Well, so if you do the route I did, and again, this was the sixth company I've started to run. I'm like, oh, I think I can get this thing up and running. I didn't know what I didn't know, but you're constantly writing checks and writing checks, and you're not paying yourself, and it starts to erode your self-confidence a little bit when the checkbook goes down and you're paying all your employees, but you're not paying yourself. That's not fun. You got to pay yourself, and you have to bring investment. So the first, I don't think I took investment money till like year 3 or 4, whatever it was.
Okay.
And it was $100,000. It was really small. It was 3 of my really close friends, and then we did, other rounds, but we haven't raised much. But I should have gone out and raised $5 million because there was money out there for it. Because there were some massive wins in the natural space, like Skinny Pot being their first like monster acquisition in Chicago. There was plenty of money out there.
Yeah.
If you don't raise money, it sucks the life out of the fun you're going to have as an entrepreneur. And when you raise money, yeah, it's hard, and you're going to give away a good chunk of your company. And I would say definitely get an advisor or ask other entrepreneurial friends, because not all companies that invest in companies are the most up and up, right?
Right.
But if you don't raise the money and you're just living hand to mouth and you're worried about cash, or you can't pay your mortgage or whatever, that's no fun. It's not fun at all. So, well, I had a conversation yesterday with a guy who owns a bar company who's a friend, and I'm like, go raise money. You got to go raise $5 million. Talk to everybody. And if people in Chicago, if the investment community just doesn't, it's sales. If they don't
Right. Sure.
like it, try the West Coast, try New York City. There's money out there for a good idea, but you must raise money, especially in consumer packaged goods. And your industry, you can probably get by with not raising money because you're a service industry, which is nice, because you don't have to go out and buy $300,000 pieces of machinery. That's really nice. But in our industry, it's capital. Growing a CPG brand is a capital pig. I mean, the more successful you get, the less cash you have.
Yeah, that's a good. I mean, that is a fact.
My wife is like, again, I got married very late in life. She's like, I thought you were successful. Why are we living in a shitty apartment? I thought you were successful. I'm like, I used to be. I'm not anymore. I'm a loser.
No.
So, yeah, no, I'm kidding. But
I get it though.
It just it sucks your cash, especially if you're self-funding. Because every month you have less money. And guess what? If you get a big order from Walmart for $1 million, you're going to have to manufacture that. If you're using a co-packer, you're going to have to place the order 120 days before or 90 days before. They're going to buy the ingredients. You're going to have to pay for those ingredients ahead of time. You're going to have to pay for the line time ahead of time, most likely. So let's say on $1 million, your profit is, I'm making this up, 300 grand. You got to shell out $700,000 and do your packaging.
And you got to do that with usually payment terms. So you're not getting paid from Walmart for God knows how long.
You ship it January 1st, you're going to get paid Feb 1st, right? But you had to make that stuff 90 days before. So you got to shell out cash in September or October, maybe before. You're going to have 700 grand. Where's it going to come from?
That's a great point. And so from your perspective and what you've been through, what's like for someone starting a CPG, let's just use bars because we both know bars well. What would you suggest is like, obviously the valuation is going to be different for everybody, but how much equity is like an okay amount for someone to give up? Like what in your mind is like reasonable versus like egregious?
I would raise 2 years of what you think you're going to need. So let's just say, and everybody has their performer they put together, their plan. Your plan's going to change 800 times. And I don't think I've ever made my sales projection. I actually this year we're going to crush it, but it changes. There's an old saying Mike Tyson used to say, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face.
Yes.
So everyone has their plan about my jerky company is going to do 3 million in sales because it may or may not happen. It probably won't happen. So you better plan for that. You better make sure you have money. I would say, if you think you're going to do $1 million in sales, raise a couple $1 million. If you think you do 5, raise 10. So you have 2 years. That's advice I've never taken, by the way.
Oh, okay. Got it. Yeah.
Because things happen, and you're not, maybe Costco, you're going to get no's 99% of the time. Maybe Costco is going to say no. Maybe you're going to have to shift gears and say, I want to go into C-stores because I can't get into club, or maybe grocery isn't happening for you. So you shift to Amazon.
Got it. Okay. Great advice for anyone listening who is trying to go down that road. I know we're getting to the top of the hour, so I wanted to ask. There's 3 questions I ask every founder on here, so I'm pumped to ask you these questions. So I'm sure you're going to have some good answers. The first one is, so obviously being an entrepreneur, you are running around with your head cut off. I know you've got a million different things you're working on. What do you use from a tools perspective to organize your goals, your tasks? Like, how do you know what you're working on and getting accomplished every week? Are you a pen and paper kind of guy? Do you use apps? What is kind of your secret sauce?
Definitely pen and paper. I'm not as good as I used to be as far as 5 things I want to achieve this week, because it changes. Although that's really good to do. What I do is, here, I'm old school, so composition book. I just
Love it.
keep it
Oh yeah.
and I write my notes. It's really good to write shit down, because if your life is spent behind a computer and your 4,000 different Excel spreadsheet, you get lost. You can't touch it. There's something about touching, a piece of paper and writing it down, for me anyway, that just works. My wife's the same way. She puts together her lists. I've got a whiteboard right here, and I've got all the big retailers that I want to contact. I look at it every freaking day, every moment, like probably 20 times a day. Who are the accounts I want? Have I talked to them? Am I doing everything I can to get in front of those guys to pitch?
Oh, I love that. Just it's kind of like the have you, I mean, I don't know how much you follow football. Do you follow football at all?
Uh, a little, not really.
Okay. Well,
What?
the reason I say it is Odell Beckham Jr., who's one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. Like, he finally made it onto the Rams and won the Super Bowl. And that's one of those guys that, he thought he'd win eventually. But it was cool because he posted a picture after the Super Bowl that he wrote the day he got traded to LA. It was like, you're gonna be a Super Bowl champ this year, on his mirror. So like every day when he got up, it's what he saw. It reminded me of that.
Well, it's like we talked about like half an hour ago. It's a competitiveness. It's a fire that you have or you don't have. It's also a brain type.
Yeah.
There's supposedly 16 different brain types. You can figure out which one you are. You can go online. There's some funny quizzes. But are you competitive, or are you a work to live guy, or are you a live to work guy? So like, do you really just want to be out hiking or walking your dog? That's totally cool. But you're probably not going to, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, that's probably not the greatest fit. Hiking is great, and actually, I've picked my 2 favorite things to do. Those are great to do, but your ass has to be in a seat, and you
Yeah.
got to be working.
Got it. That makes sense. I love that. I'm a pen and paper guy too, just so you know. It's funny. I would say again, 98% of the entrepreneurs I've had on here all say pen and paper. So funny. That's a very
You know why?
similar one.
Because it's like, how many tabs can you have?
Well, it's funny because how many apps are there now to try to solve that problem? And everyone's like, nah, no. It's funny because a lot of those apps are really popular, but I don't know who uses them. Not people who are starting businesses. So
Here's another suggestion for entrepreneurs: pick up the effing phone and call your customers or call your prospects. It's one thing that everyone forgets. Like, my first job out of college, I worked for a paper company in Chicago, and it was cold calling. Just call it, hey, well, you're selling printing paper to commercial lithographers, not
right.
the second business in the world. So it's all about do it, do it, do it. And I used to. This is like before cell phones. Like, you have the old phone, and I used to tape the phone to my hand so that I wouldn't leave, because
That's hilarious.
like, hi, I'm Jim from Black. 99.9% of people would be like, go away, dude. It's a numbers game, and people in our industry forget, because you have so many different layers. You've got brokers, you've got master brokers, you've got distributors, but you still have that buyer with the retailer. That's the decision maker. And it's something I stress with my salespeople constantly: call the decision maker, pick up the phone, dial the numbers, and call them. And you might get them. Like, I got the buyer from a major grocery chain yesterday at like 5 o'clock. I called, and I got her, because no one calls
Wow.
anymore.
Yeah. That's a good point. Everyone wants to LinkedIn message, Instagram message, whatever it is. That's true. I do not get as many phone calls as I used to, even a couple of years ago,
Never.
I'd say.
Because there's so many different ways to connect, texting or whatever. But I
Right.
always tell my wife, pick up the effing phone, because she's a sales rep. And yeah, she doesn't do it as much as I'd like her to. But she's, well, I'll email them. No, call them.
Yeah. No, I love that. I love that. The very last question, the most important question is how can people learn more about Jimmy Bar? How can people follow Jimmy, whether it's social media, whatever we want to plug? And then how can people follow and get a hold of you?
First of all, if you haven't bought Jimmy Bars, go to Amazon or jimmybars.com and buy a lot. It's worth spending probably your college fund. Like really,
I'll agree.
thousands and thousands of dollars go to Jimmy Bars.
We'll
Jimmy Bars,
we'll put a nice discount code on there to link to Amazon or the website after this too.
it's worth losing all your money for sure.
They're delicious. I will agree.
Yeah, here's an idea. Just pick up the effing phone and call me. I love helping entrepreneurs. And you're right, it's a lonely game, and sometimes you've probably been there. I've been there. Every entrepreneur, it's like you're just you just need help, man. You're like, someone just give me some advice,
Right.
just to help. And I wish there was a tighter community. I mean, I would say CPGs, pretty cool people in general, and I think entrepreneurs are very cool people. You rarely meet like a total jerk who's an entrepreneur. They're out there, but usually they're pretty cool, soulful people. They have balls and their heads usually in the right place. So, call an entrepreneur or someone you respect and ask for help, and they're very apt to help you.
Love that. Love that. Very good. And we'll add links to everything in the show notes for everyone to find. Jim, thank you for taking the time today. This was so much fun. It was great to get to know you a little better.
Sugar Shane Bars coming to your neighborhood store.
I love it. I love it. We might have to make this happen just for fun now. Now that this is out in the world, now we might have to make it happen. That's called Netty.
You can be front flexing.
There we go. I love it. Well, awesome. Well, Jim, thank you again so much, and best of luck. Obviously, we'll get a lot of people trying Jimmy Bars.
Thanks, brother.
Awesome. We'll have a good one, and I will talk to you very soon.
You bet. Bye-bye.